This content is brought to you by Kim Westland Incorporated, helping you create a vision for your life.
Hi, I'm Kim Westland, and I help people just like you discover and take action on their vision so they can build the life they've always dreamed about. When I started my business, I remember trying a whole lot of different things. I was so busy figuring out what most business owners are figuring out, and that's what's most important. How do I want to communicate with my audience? What's my message? And what should I be producing? And I tried a lot of different ways of doing things. And through the process, I ran with a whole lot of ideas and I tested them. And some ideas I stopped or I moved away from. And as I did this, as people do, I started questioning, because it's easy to do that when you start a business. I couldn't seem to get to a place of constantly producing and putting out content that I could maintain. And I used to wonder, is there something wrong with me? Should I have this business? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Is this what I'm truly meant to do? I didn't want to be a quitter because I knew there was something valuable that I had to get out into the world. And I just had to figure out what and how to do it. So I say all that to say that I learned something along the way that I see a lot of people doing. And I believe it's one of the hidden keys and an indicator that confirms that this is what you really should be doing. And it helps business owners stand out from the crowd. Do you want to know what that particular hidden key is? It's consistency. Surprisingly, I haven't found a whole lot of material on this subject. There's been some people that have touched on it here and there, but I found that it wasn't widely discussed. So I want to take a deeper dive into this today, and I'm going to talk about it because I think it's really important for growth and, like I said, even for confirming if you're on the right track. So the first thing I noticed after choosing to show up time after time after time, even when it got hard, is that consistency builds momentum. What do I mean by that? Well, when I had my very first podcast, I didn't really know what I was doing. I'll be honest with you. I was in the stage of figuring out a whole lot of things, and I was throwing a lot against the wall to see what would stick and trying to figure out the direction that I should be going. And I didn't really have a schedule or any kind of real plan that I was following. I just kind of recorded when I felt inspired. I recognized over time that listeners never really knew what to expect from me. And one thing I've learned is that consistency creates expectancy. I had to be more consistent so my listeners would learn to expect my podcast to show up on a particular day or more regularly. So I had to correct my discipline in this area. And as I've built my business, I decided and I committed at a certain point to putting out a weekly podcast and a newsletter. As I look back, I avoided that for a really long time because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. So for some time now, I've been doing that and I've created some momentum. Do you think I've consistently felt like putting a recording out or a podcast or spending time putting a newsletter together? No, not always. And do you know why? I'll just be honest. Life gets in the way. Sometimes I've had a rotten week or a rotten day, and I don't feel like sitting down and going through the motion of doing that. Because I've made that commitment, in some way, shape, or form, something is going to go out to my audience. Consistency can rise above your feelings. I will say it does not have to be perfect, and this is the key. It can look a little different from time to time. One week I remember putting out a newsletter that basically said, I'm keeping it short and sweet this week. And it was because I wasn't having a particularly great week. But I still put it out, and that was the key. I was still consistent. There's something magical that happens when you reach a milestone in being diligent. There's momentum, but also consistency builds depth in whatever you're applying it to. Let me say that again. Consistency builds depth into whatever you're applying it to. That might be a new thought for some of you today. Maybe you didn't think being consistent was really all that important. But when you think about it on that level, it really is. I believe that alone is the missing ingredient for a lot of people trying to build a business. There's a whole lot of surface level content out there. And I found people in general are searching for deeper meaning and authenticity and depth of content. And I found that out for myself on the subject of vision. That word, vision, excites me so much because I know it has the potential, when it's truly understood on a deep level, to change people's lives and to impact the world. Everything I do is now connected to that word, and I'm building depth of understanding, not only for me, but for my listeners each and every week. So it's not enough to skim the surface, but with consistency, you can take a deep dive into understanding even what you're passionate about on a deeper level. Little mysteries will start to come alive and start to reveal themselves in a way that you never imagined. You can literally be in the top % of experts in your field if you simply learn to be consistent. That's good news for somebody today. I also want to mention that consistency will show the cracks. We're gonna take a bit of a detour here and talk about this because this is really important. This may be derailing you in what you're trying to achieve. One of the cracks that you may start to see is that you're not passionate about what you're doing. It's hard to maintain something you don't have your whole heart in. Many people try because they think that this is going to make them a ton of money. They start chasing after wealth and fame and those kinds of things. But that really tends to be short-lived, and nothing impactful or sustainable really came from someone chasing money. If you've started a business, or you are going to university, or you've engaged in something, and after time, you're finding out that you're not truly interested in it, you may want to reevaluate because it's going to be hard to maintain. And you might find that that's already been happening. So there's a clue. This is maybe not for you. And this might even bring you a bit of discouragement finding this out, that you've possibly put money and time into this. But don't be discouraged. I want to encourage you today because it's all in how you look at it. What you've really done is found this out maybe a little earlier in the game instead of continuing on down a path, not recognizing that this just isn't for you. Another crack that can show up is finding out what you're not good at or skilled in. When you find you're struggling to maintain consistency in what you're doing, you need to ask yourself a couple of things. Am I struggling because this is new and I need to learn a new skill and I'm just kind of uncomfortable and I just need to dig in and learn? Or am I struggling because this is something I'm just not good at? It's a possible weakness and doesn't really light me up. There's parts of my business like that, and eventually I will pass those things off. But there's a clear distinction there. When you experience these kinds of cracks, as hard as that may be, you can start filling them in. And that's called growth. Listen to this. Consistency will build trust. And do you know what? Trust is the currency of any relationship. When we are consistent in our actions, in who we are, our character, in what we say, our emotions, and our message to people, people will learn to trust the source and who it's coming from. One of the biggest mistakes we can make is to not recognize or think about how inconsistent behavior affects how people want to engage with us. If I know what to expect and that's being established, I'm more likely to want more. That's the way it's been with people I respect in business and friendships I choose. I've chosen to be around people that are consistent in their growth, in how they conduct themselves, in their character, in what they say, how they treat others, their message. That's who I gravitate to. And sometimes it's easy to think about and apply that principle to personal relationships. But what about your customers or people you want to attract to your business? Have you thought about how you show up? If you say you're going to do something and then you don't follow through, you'll find likely a lack of engagement with your business or with you as an individual. So if you're somebody that has employees, what if they decided one day they just weren't going to show up because they didn't feel like it? Well, that doesn't really work in business, does it? So when you set a standard for consistency, it should show up in all areas of your business. There's an ease and a contentment knowing what to expect. There's a common term that I think we're all familiar with about walking on eggshells, and that is never a pleasant experience for anyone. So when you set a standard to be consistent in all you say and do, people are more likely to take you seriously because trust stops at the point of uncertainty. I'll end with this thought. Building trust means that money will eventually follow. Don't chase money, chase consistency. That's the key. The bottom line here is that consistency or a lack of it can either help you or it can hurt you. We live in a world where the pace of everything is speeding up and changing all the time. So how important is it to remain consistent and steadfast and even patient in the foundation of what you're building? Dig in, find out where you're lacking in consistency. It could be one of the major missing keys that you've been looking for. And if you want to learn more about how to discover your purpose and stop living a mediocre life, reach out. I can help. Thanks for listening.